What's up guys, Ernest with Langdon Tactical, and today we're going to talk about shooting with one hand, both strong hand and support hand. Alright guys, there's a lot of good reasons for spending time on the range shooting with one hand. If you do get into an altercation with your handgun, there's a pretty good chance you may not have both hands available to you. There's two reasons for that. One, your other hand may be occupied. You could be holding onto a loved one, you could be holding onto a ladder, any of those types of things. But more likely than not, there's at least a good chance that you could get injured by being shot in the hand or the forearm, rendering that hand unusable. So being able to shoot the gun with only one hand is an important skill set. Now, when we start talking about shooting with one hand, let's talk about it from an ideal shooting platform, even though it's unlikely that you'll be there. To start with, if I'm going to shoot the gun with my right hand, ideal shooting platform is right foot forward. Okay? The reason for that is we want to be able to lean into the gun aggressively and not put a twist on our spine. If we've got our hips and turned around this way and we lean into it aggressively, we put a twist on that spine, and that does two things. From a human performance standpoint, that's a bad thing. And the other thing that it does is when the gun recoils, often it wants to recoil away from the mass of the hand, and then because we have a twist on our spine, now it wants to go back in the other direction, and it's difficult for you to have consistent, repeatable shots in that nature. So if we get ourselves nice and square with a neutral spine, the gun does recoil away from the mass of the hand, but it wants to come back to where it was previously. Also, when we start talking about the gun recoiling away from the mass of the hand, ideally we want to keep our body fairly square. By keeping our body fairly square, we're engaging more of the large muscles in our chest and our back to help us control that gun in recoil. When we turn sideways here, while we can do that and do it well, we have much smaller muscles to control the path of recoil. So again, try to keep your body fairly square so that you have more control over recoil. This is also a better position to be in if you have to shoot on the move, and if you need to turn sideways, well then so be it, all right? So keep ourselves fairly square. Also, as we move out towards the gun, we want to keep our upper body in a fairly neutral position. Try to avoid getting used to ducking your head down to get behind the sights. That's not going to be something that's easy for you to do under duress. So keep our head neutral and lift the sights to our line of our eye. That issue that comes into play is the bore of the gun ends up being aligned with our forearm. When we extend the gun, now it wants to line up with our shoulders, not our dominant eye. We have two choices: dip the elbow down so that those sights are in line with the dominant eye, or rotate the gun slightly so that the sights are in line with the dominant eye. I personally prefer to rotate the gun a little bit. Other guys like to do it differently, but for me this is much more natural, especially if I'm shooting one-handed on the move. When we put our gun into our support hand, everything remains the same. We're still going to use our dominant eye to aim the gun. We're not going to switch hands and switch eyes, but we are going to have to rotate the gun ever so slightly more in order to get those sights in front of our dominant eye, or we're going to have to dip that elbow a little bit more to get those sights in line with our dominant eye. Again, we want to avoid dropping our head or doing anything excessive and maintain a neutral body position, because it's going to be very or much easier for you to do that in a more dynamic situation that you might be in. And final thing guys, when you're practicing with only one hand, it's going to become very apparent that proper trigger control and timing to avoid anticipation is going to become critical. That lack of the other hand supporting and controlling recoil is going to become very apparent. If you anticipate recoil, those mistakes are going to be significant. So make sure that you focus on prepping and pressing that trigger correctly while maintaining control of the gun. Guys, make sure you practice training with one hand. Very important skill set. Train hard, stay safe, and we'll see you next time.